So welcome everyone. My name's Randy. I'm Randy Dybel. I'll be your, host, MC, Master of Ceremonies. And I want to introduce you all as well to the folks who not only brought this event together, but have been working really hard in a number of areas. Well, first of all, there's Luke Hoffman, who has his group. It's not that these are so separate. We're often many of the same people, but Lou has his group of folks who work on the mathematics of laws of form. They meet every week, and at the same time,
Randy.
Yeah.
I don't own a group.
Okay. Yeah. No, there's no ownership here and whatnot. Right. So one of the things we will be introducing officially shortly, I'll let Graham take it in a moment, is a Spencer Brown Society. So we're going to get that going. So there's going to be like an official group delineated here. But I just want to mention that some of us have been meeting frequently, and this is by way of introducing this other little group that is me. And it's not that they're separate, right? That's my point. I want to emphasize that we're all performing different initiatives, but all under the same identity and similarity, right? So there's me, Florian, Graham, Leon, Sahu. We've been meeting frequently to organize the conferences that we've been hosting and this event and some other things. So we'll be sharing all that stuff with you. But I just wanted to introduce those folks, Florian, Graham, Leon, Sahu, and myself, who may be taking it away in a moment to introduce some other important announcements that we have and things that we want to share. So so maybe I'll let Graham take it now and give the sort of introductory speech material you wanted to start with.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to give a little bit of background to Spencer Brown's life and work just for a few minutes, so that people who don't know much about him will perhaps be a little bit better informed. So welcome everyone, welcome to GSB-100 in celebration and remembrance of George Spencer Brown and his what would have been his 100th birthday. In late 2012, I suggested holding a conference in honor of Spencer Brown on his 90th birthday. But after considering it, he decided not to proceed, as due to his increasing frailty, he no longer felt confident that he could defend his claims of the proof of the four-color theorem and the Riemann hypothesis. So, having missed out on his 90th birthday celebration, here we are 10 years on. Alas, without him, but we're here anyway. Anyhow, I'll give you a brief introduction to his life and work before we press on with the rest of the programme. Born in Grimsby, Lincolnshire, 100 years ago today, and christened with this spoon and this christening cup. He was christened as George Spencer Brown, with George and Spencer as his given names, as Spencer was not at that time part of his surname. That became later incorporated into the surname later. He attended Mill Hill School before going to London Hospital Medical College. In 1943, he was called up into the Royal Navy, where he worked in radio mechanics and telegraphy and served as a lieutenant on HMS Revenge. In 1947, he left the Navy and went up to his father's old college at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he read philosophy and psychology, became a chess half-blue, captain combined universities, learnt to fly, and led the formation aerobatic team, for which he won this tankard here. It's got his name, you can't see it, but it's got his name on it and the names of the other pilots who are in his team. It states that he was the leader of the team. And at Cambridge, of course, he became acquainted with Wittgenstein. In 1952, after Trinity, he moved to Christchurch, Oxford, where as a Don, he taught PPE, that's politics, philosophy and economics. For those who maybe aren't British and don't know that. At Oxford, he changed his name to David. This name change was the first of several throughout his life, changing successively from George to David, Anton, Andrew, James, Maxwell, and finally Richard. This is the strange effect of people who met him at different stages in his life, referring to him by different names. I addressed him as Maxwell throughout our friendship. His first book, Probability and Scientific Inference, was published in 1957. He was still known as David when in 1959 he left Christchurch for industry, working for Mullard's as a logic engineer and then Sigma and IPC. Now, this has led to a lot of confusion because his brother was also called David and his brother also worked for Mullard's at the same time. It was at Mullard's working on the design of logic gates that George discovered the boundary operator, which he wrote up in his paper Design with the Gnaw, and which ultimately led to the discovery of the primary algebra and later the primary arithmetic. He discovered the primary algebra before the primary arithmetic. He discussed these discoveries with Bertrand Russell, who praised Spencer Brown's work as original, excellent, and of great power and simplicity. In 1965, Harry Frost wanted to run a course of lectures on logic at London University. So he wrote to Russell asking Russell whether he would like to give the course. Now, Russell was pretty elderly and Harry knew full well that Russell wouldn't give the lectures, but Harry hoped he'd recommend the top man in the field. Russell wrote back recommending Spencer Brown as doing, quote, the best work known to me, unquote. So a date was arranged for the first lecture, but at the start time, George had not shown up and Harry was thinking that he'd have to give the lecture himself. At that moment, George appeared naked from the waist up and with a whiskey bottle in hand, not usual apparel to give a lecture, and proceeded to give an outstanding lecture. Harry quickly realized that the account of logic that Spencer Brown was giving was both unconventional and brilliant. The course of lectures was repeated each year for several years, and it was from these lectures that Laws of Form was born, and on Russell's recommendation was published by Allen and Unwin in 1969. Now, I think it's really unfortunate that Wittgenstein died before Laws of Form was published. In fact, Wittgenstein would have been about 80, I think, when Laws of Form was published, but I'm certain that he would have praised it to the hilt, since it identifies and introduces the primitive sign of logic, which Wittgenstein was searching for. The primitive sign of logic is, of course, Spencer Brown's boundary operator. With Wittgenstein's support, Spencer Brown would have received, I'm certain, much greater recognition. After the publication of Laws of Form, Spencer Brown wrote Only Two Can Play This Game. And about this time, George claimed that he became enlightened when considering how the universe came into being. Note the time dependency here, that Laws of Form preceded by round about a year George's claimed enlightenment. Anyhow, in the 1960s, he collaborated with the psychiatrist R.D. Laing, though they fell out very badly when Laing provided what Spencer Brown regarded as a damaging preface to Only Two. He accused Laing of trying to harm him by damning him with faint praise, so they had a pretty serious fallout. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, he held visiting professorships at the University of Western Australia, Stanford University, the University of Maryland, and Naval Research Laboratory, NRL, in Washington, D.C. In 1976, Apple, Harkin, and Koch announced their claimed computer proof of the four-color conjecture that any planar map can be colored with at most four colors such that no two countries sharing a common border are colored alike. Spurred by the AHK announcement, George claimed a hand proof of the four-color theorem and then lectured on his proof at Stanford, though his proof was not generally accepted. He later told me that the AHK announcement had spurred him into making a premature claim, which he later regretted. He continued work on the four-color theorem in the 1970s and 1980s, and in the 1990s turned his attention to the Riemann hypothesis, that all the Riemann zeta function non-trivial zeros have a real value of 1/2. And he claimed a proof of this in 2008. Neither proof is generally accepted, but the modular method technique employed with the four-color theorem is of great beauty, and the self-correcting method he employed on the Riemann hypothesis is of considerable, remarkable ingenuity. In his early 90s, he was taken into hospital in 2013 and several months later transferred to Market Lavington Care Home. I'd arranged to visit him one day in August 2017, but when I called the care home, I was told that he'd suffered a fall the previous night and didn't wish to see anyone. He died the following day. At the funeral, I announced the conference to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the publication of Laws of Form. And I'd like to give really fulsome praise and thanks to Andrew Crompton and to the University of Liverpool for their hospitality in hosting not only Loft 50 in 2019, but also its successor conference, Loft 22, in 2022. We're planning to hold another conference, Loft 24, next year, and it is intended that these conferences will be held every 2 years. Both the conferences, 2019 and the 2022 conferences, were extremely successful. Spencer Brown now lies, as he wished, in Brookwood Cemetery in unconsecrated ground, close to the grave of Charles Bradlaugh, one of his heroes, the Victorian atheist and political campaigner. We've raised funds for a granite gravestone, which has now been installed, and Leon will give details of that shortly. Okay, that's my introduction.
Great, thank you, Graham. That was terrific. So, yeah, so the 2019 conference and the 2022 conference led to a great deal of activity. A lot of the folks here were participants of those. And who wants to, which of our organizers want to discuss that matter? The 2019 conference came out as this book, which just came out this year. Very large book of all of our talks.
Yeah, Lou, I think is going to talk about that later.
Yeah, I will.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. So that was the product of that conference, and we also have announcements about going forward. We're going to publish in a slightly different way that will hopefully give us even more flexibility and more opportunities for folks to publish as well.
Right. So Randy, yeah, I was going to just say, like, I mean, you've been very instrumental in that yourself, Randy, and we discussed how we could move the publications like going forward. And Randy, you've been in touch with college publications out of the UK who have a very generous and open model for us to publish there. So that would be something that we can use going forward. And the idea was that since we've seen so much different material, right, also just different in volume, that people would want to publish, the idea would be that there would be a journal and then also put a book series, both a journal on form and a book series on form. And that we would move ahead. And of course, there we also would need any help that we can get in terms of running that, in terms of editing it, and people helping out with reviews and all of that. So so far, the idea is to call the journal Distinction, Laws Journal on Form. And my institution here in Berlin, Germany, Code University of Applied Sciences, has been graciously now providing funding for potentially running the review and submission system, so that we have a professionally hosted system that we can use to actually invite people to submit material. And then we can go from there and work with anybody who also wishes to be involved in actually making those publications happen with the review process and the editing process. So we're very much looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll need to get all of that aligned and organized. And then we will be sending out an invitation to contribute material and to propose contributions to the journal and the book series as soon as possible.
That's right. Thank you, Florian. Yeah, we have a journal submission platform system, thanks to Florian. So that's happening soon. So that means that all the talks from LOF 22 can go through that, and we can start organizing these into this journal. We're also going to have the possibility of a book series. So that's also in the works. Now, these activities bring us perhaps to a next matter. We have formed into the Spencer Brown Society. I wonder if Graham or Leon, you'd like to say some words about that now?
May I give it to you, Graham.
Sure, but would you like to say a little bit about the gravestone first, Leon, which is where
yeah.
I sort of finished my chat, my introduction.
Yeah, willingly. So the gravestone was laid, and it would, I think, make GSB very happy to know that people have gathered symbolically around him and his memory and his contributions to celebrate them. He always wanted to be somewhere important, significant. And he had his wish of being buried in unconsecrated ground by Bradlaugh. He would be very pleased to note that the graveyard has given his presence a notable grave status, which means that he gets a special plaque by his grave and a special mention on his website. Graham is writing that account of his life up. In order to do that, there is a rather hefty charge of several £100 for the plaque to be designed and put in, and for whatever they call it, a QR code to be put on, facilitated. And one of the things we need to look at as part of the society is to raise funds for that.
Now, in 2019, our conference raised, I just want to say our conference raised the funds for the gravestone. And I thought also maybe I would show an image of this.
Yeah, please do, Randy. Yeah.
Momentarily, but go on, Graham.
No, I was going to say, if you've got an image of the gravestone, please show it for those who haven't seen it, because I think it's a pretty smart piece of work.
Yeah,
there are a few designers involved in it, including Akim, who's a brilliant font designer, quite apart from anything else. And also Andrew Crompton of Liverpool, of course, played an important role. Is Andrew here? I can't see Andrew on the.
No, I also looked for him. I couldn't see him.
Okay. But Andrew also played a significant role in the final design.
Randy, show it in full screen.
um,
Seeing the
Swap displays, Randy. Swap displays.
okay, so
Anyhow, we've obtained notable grave status for Spencer Brown, which doesn't cost us any money at all, and he's now going to be put on the Brookwood Cemetery. Yes, there we go, on the Brookwood Cemetery website. But the notable grave marker is a rather separate issue, which is a QR type thing, and as people walk round and they see the marker, they can scan it with their mobile phones, which will take them to the website. The cost of the marker is pretty high. It's about £500, so it's not a priority for us at the moment. It would be a nice to have, but it's not a priority. Can we go back to the gravestone again, Randy?
yeah,
Please.
yeah. Okay, there it is.
So you can see the initials. You can see his name, dates, and the initials of the primary arithmetic there.
Yeah, so this is largely, or even entirely, thanks to the donations that we received at the 2019 conference. So we'll go over more pictures later. Yeah, so that's something that we're also doing. We're looking for donations in general. We ask for donations on our website. There's a link for that sort of thing. So those funds, they do go to help with the conferences and the publication stuff, but I think most of it, in fact, goes to at least at this early stage, helping with Spencer Brown's grave matters, right?
Okay. We need perhaps Kevin German could talk a little bit about is the expression writer now, which I think is extremely important. It's important to me anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if Kevin's there right now.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So 1 second. So I will share my screen and then I can show the status of it.
Oh yeah. Okay, let me help you with that as well. Sorry, 1 sec. I'm just gonna make you host.
Okay. I can still not share my screen.
Sorry. 1 sec. I just need tech support. 1 sec.
But maybe quick words to it. So I developed 2 tools to transform bracket notations into laws of form expressions.
Oh, hey, Kevin, I'm sorry. 1 sec. I tried to make you host. I made Jack host. I think I need Jack. Sorry, Jack.
Well, I don't know how to do this. You got to help me out. So, I go down to the menu at the bottom, something.
Yeah, so down at the bottom of the menu of participants,
Oh, okay.
you should be able to see.
Oh, it says host me. So I click
Okay.
on, I
Click on you.
so what do? I see host me,
Click on.
Oh, okay.
Click on Randy.
or click on
Reclaim-
more.
Okay, sorry about all good, all good.
Okay, good.
Okay, right. Let me make Kevin host real quick here. Oh, wait, let me not do that one.
Don't do that.
Ah, all
There you go.
participants. Okay. All right, you should be good now, Kevin.
Good. Perfect. Thanks. 1 second. Okay, so you can probably see the screen, right? With the laws of form parser.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so there are 2 things which I developed. Like one thing is the laws of form parser, which just takes like the bracket notation and transforms it into these expressions, which we all know. So in this case, it's the modulator function. And so the problem with Spencer Brown's work is that it's like the entry barrier is quite high to get into, especially if you read up into it and if you want to have like some visualization of the tools, especially if you are working digitally. And so I tried to develop some tools to lower the entry barrier for beginners, just like myself. And so what I did is like I developed a library, which is a web library. It's like the most used library for front-end development, so that everyone who wants to make a website can easily insert the lob expressions into it by just using brackets. So for example, here's like, that's a parser, which one can use. We can like use like the bracket notation, can put stuff into it, and everything will be generated automatically, live. We can play around, we can modify the stuff, and so on. We can save it as a SVG. But the cool thing about this is that it's like, it's a React library, so everyone can just include it into their own website if they're using React or some different framework, which can also be, which is also, like if someone is using different framework, like for example WordPress or something, there are ways to include this plugin into it. And if you want to use it, you can go into to love-rect.web.app and play around with it. But that's just like one part. The other thing, which is something which Florian asked me to do, was to develop a plugin for Obsidian. I don't know if anyone is familiar besides Florian with Obsidian MD. Okay, I will share my other screen.
Do I have audio here?
Yes.
So I think this would be an excellent inclusion in the Mathematica.
Ooh.
Yeah, I could look into it.
You remember we had him on the conference last summer, and haven't heard anything since, have we? That would be this would be an excellent improvement of Mathematica, extension of it.
I'm in touch with Stephen Wolfram. I'll send him an email about this.
Oh, excellent!
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And that would be the the obvious channel for getting it out, and also it'd be tremendously useful extension to his current work and to that tool. Okay.
Good idea. Thank you. I wonder, I'm not as familiar with this aspect of everything. I wonder if how does this compare to the stuff that Akeem has at West Den Haag?
So I can go. Okay, 1 second again. I will go to the website. I will just show it on Obsidian. So the thing is, the thing with West Haag, was it right? Which is developed, it's not working really well with re-entries, and there are some other problems which are also there, and it's also not interactive in that sense that you can have like interactive HTML elements built into it. Just switching around the screens. But here, like in the bottom, you can see like if someone, for example, wants to have some interactive laws of form expressions, they can just do it. So here, like we can have buttons included. We can make calculations live. We can transform like the expressions into other expressions. And one thing which I want to build in the next coming months is like one central website where different interpretations of the laws can be placed, and where everyone can play interactively around with these expressions. For example, that one can how functions are displayed, how it can be used for sociology, how we can do like counting and whatever. And for that, like it's necessary to have like some form of interactivity, like here, just like we can play around with it. We can also have like videos, whatever included. Since this is like pure HTML and CSS, it works with everything which is like built up on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And
you did that in pure HTML
and CSS and
wow.
JavaScript. So this is like natively running in a browser. Like all these expressions you can see here, they are like just divs and CSS. So this means that it's like compatible with pretty much everything. Everything which can run like an internet browser can run this. And most apps nowadays which are developed, they are built on Electron. It's something which is built up on Chromium, which is like a browser, which is a browser in fact. And so that means with this plugin, everyone can include laws of form stuff into the apps and into front end stuff, into the WordPress thingy, whatever. Okay.
That is so awesome.
Thanks.
I have a couple other suggestions at this point. One of them, take a look at my July 4, 2000 U.S. patent. Because in there, I used inversion of laws of form to specify a universal programming language.
Okay.
And so I think that this could be directly applied to that. And I'd also look forward to seeing this for the second degree expressions.
Yeah, so I will show it. It works for second degree expressions. And
excellent. That's amazing. Also, it works for second degree expressions. Oh my God. That's amazing.
Also, I will come to it. Okay. Also, like one thing which I wanted to do is like build some, as you said, some kind of programming language based on laws of form. And for that, it was necessary to have like some parser for the bracket notation.
Yes.
It can be extended,
yes.
To do other kinds of stuff.
That's what I and my group worked out, and we had it already in 1995, and so that's the subject matter of the patent that I mentioned, July 4, 2000, which is a comprehensive software environment and software builder. That was I guess the most extensive expression of my much earlier studies with G. Spencer Brown.
So I do want to keep these interventions to a minimum at this point. I hope that we will expand. I'm curious. I know there are connections with like Luke Hoffman has some things to say as well. William Bricken probably has some stuff to say about the programming languages stuff. Maybe later. Don't worry, I'm not calling on you right now.
I want to make a comment about the Mathematica, though, if you'll let me share a screen for a second. That's the comment. Sorry, it's not visible. Now it's visible. There is a command already in Mathematica called nest list, and you can do these things. So I think it won't be too hard to modify Mathematica to handle laws of form expressions. It's a nice project. That's my comment.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I think the tricky thing is the re-entry part, which
yeah. That's another matter.
Right.
So I will show it now. Okay, now to the next part. Florian knows about Obsidian. I don't know if like I cannot see everyone here, but yeah, to make a short introduction into Obsidian, it's a tool to create your own digital Zettelkasten. Zettelkasten is probably something most of you know, like from Niklas Luhmann. So you make nodes and you can connect them with other nodes and so on. And then you have like this network of many different kinds of nodes, and then you have map of contents and so on. And you can you have like somehow you're structuring your thoughts in a more chaotic way through chance and necessity. And this is a great tool to like create new interconnected thoughts and get new ideas and communicate with this Zettelkasten. And this Obsidian MD is like the most popular tool for this now. And it's also built up on a browser, and that means we can use it and just include this tool, which I showed like on a website, and implement it into this Obsidian MD tool. And so, for example, if you want to have like brackets, we can just like we can make it, and we can just make one pair of brackets, and then we get a cross. We can have text in the space, and like this will be live transformed to the laws of form expressions. If we want to have like stuff from the book, we can also just do it. Like this is like page 55, and
what do you mean by in the top right corner you have a double bracketed slash? What
is this is just like for opening and modifying the stuff. So if I want to make out of this the 0, and this is his 0.
Because that symbol would be.
Let's wrap it up. Actually, maybe just like another minute, Kevin, so we can move on to the other programs, things on the agenda.
Okay, and now quickly to the re-entries. So we can have also re-entries, like the space itself is marked with a $sign. The space which should re-enter somewhere else is marked with a $sign and a number, and then we can just use square brackets to denote a re-entry, where it re-enters. And so we can have like also a re-entry which re-enters into different locations. If we would stop here, everything gets reformatted automatically. We can nest them however we want. We can have the modulator function, and if we want to like put more text into the modulator function, we can do it. Just playing around, and this will automatically gets transformed to the expression.
Should
Yeah.
be paying attention to something else.
And if we want to also, like, if we want to change like the styling of everything, we can just do it. We can use different fonts. We can use pretty much everything which is possible in the browser and apply it to the expressions. Yeah, that's the Obsidian MD plugin. And this will be available in a couple from the official
Tour
Obsidian.
de Force Opus Magnificat, or something like that.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's absolutely beautiful.
I could show you some also mathematical generated images which go more for Venn diagram style presentations of form rules. So if you want to see them, I could drop an image.
Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe for now, drop a link into the chat if you want. But as well, I think it is cool to like air these things in this event. So maybe we could do that later, though. I would like to get through a couple more points on our general program, and
Sure.
especially hear
Sure.
more stories about Spencer Brown.
No link that, so, but maybe I will show it in another context. Anyway, just wanted to offer this different view.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and everyone. Okay, so I do want to, like, I would love to as well, like, look at like West Den Haag. There is a similar sort of way of formulating our notations. Anyway, there's so much. I'd like to maybe have us focus a bit more on Spencer Brown. There are some people who knew Spencer Brown and who had agreed to tell us a few little anecdotes, a little bit about their experience with him.
Before we get to that, Randy, can we get through the news section, which is, I've just got a little bit to say about the Spencer Brown Society, and then we can move in, I think, to the to the book reviews. Actually, will follow.
Right.
Me. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Please take it away.
Okay. So we're setting up a formal structure, the Spencer Brown Society, to promote Spencer Brown's work by organising conferences, publications, lectures, and encouraging scholarship and that type of stuff. We've compiled a comprehensive initial draft for a constitution for the society. We employed a social economy consultant to get his advice, and we're in the process of finalizing the constitution. Unfortunately, it's not quite ready, but it is now in an advanced stage. So we hope to be sending out copies of the constitution in another week, or maybe a couple of weeks, something of that order. The society, of course, will operate democratically with elections for the officers held annually. The current working group will offer ourselves for election, but we need fresh blood and additional help. So if you'd like to contribute your time, please get in touch with us. There's plenty to be done. A couple of mini sort of projects that we've got ongoing are that we intend that Spencer Brown should be given an entry in the Dictionary of National Biography. And we're also in the early stages, the very early stages, of planning a documentary about his life and work. So if you know anyone who could help with making the documentary a reality, either through funding, contacts, or experience, please be in touch. Please let us know. The documentary we have in mind would be a blend of biographical background, interviews with those who knew him, and those who have been influenced by his work, interlaced with a pretty gentle introduction for the general viewer to the philosophy and mathematics presented in Laws of Form. The overall conception is to portray, as Einstein said of Dirac, this balancing on the dizzying path between genius and madness. Done well, I think that the contrast would make compelling viewing for a general audience as a TV documentary, which hopefully could be syndicated. If successful, maybe it would lead to a feature film in the future. That's the general idea. And finally, on the society side, we'd like to make a donation appeal. We don't intend that the society will require membership fees or subscriptions, but of course we do need funds. We need funds in particular for funding the notable grave marker. That's not a priority, but I have in my possession something like, I haven't counted them, but maybe 400 photos and negatives of Spencer Brown, which we need to digitize. Possibly a couple of hundred hours of audio tape, which needs to be digitized. We've got documents, tens of thousands of pages of documents, which we need to scan. We want to have the whole thing professionally archived before it's offered to, say, Trinity. Copyright acquisition is also an issue. And of course, there's website creation and maintenance where we can put all this online. So, you know, we do need funds. And as I say, we're not going to charge membership fees or subscriptions. So if you're in a position to donate funds, then please do so. We'd be very grateful. Okay, back to you, Randy, for the book reviews now, I think, is it?
Yeah, thank you, Graham. That's terrific. And thanks for outlining a number of the important and interesting things we're doing with Spencer Brown's material. It would be good to get that out into the world, publish unpublished papers, audio, and as Graham pointed out, the details require a little bit of funds. Yeah, so there's been a lot of publications about laws of form over the years, and in recent years there's been a bunch of things too. So since we have, in fact, some of the authors of some of these materials here with us, I thought it'd be a good moment to share like a minute or two, you know, on our material. I know that Jack, our birthday boy here, and Michael Urheber, who signed up, I'm not sure if he's here, had put out recently a play inspired by Spencer Brown, and it is called The Further Clues of Knowing, and it's already been performed a couple times, and they're working on getting it performed on Broadway some more, and even getting it perhaps, you know, making a movie or a cartoon or something based on it. So it does feature the work and the mythology, the legend of Spencer Brown. So that's this book. I have a contribution in here as well. Luke Hoffman has a contribution in this book. Yes. But I wonder if, Jack, you want to maybe say something about this book?
Yeah.
For a minute?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, you know, about 8 years ago, I was contacted by Michael, and he, well, it was actually through Arthur Young's Reflexive Universe, Evolution of Consciousness. But once he said, let's write a musical. I said, fine. So once we got onto that, then I really brought out a lot Spencer Brown stuff, and so he has been a great student of both of those. And so when the pandemic hit, it hasn't been performed. We've had 3 table reads. We're looking for a producer and director. When the pandemic hit, it threw Michael for a loop, and we decided that we could spend the time by trying to make a literary edition that people could read the script. And I was extremely happy that Randy and Lou and a couple other guys contributed wonderful articles giving the kind of the ontological infrastructure that laws of form has. And Michael has made it into a drama. So, you don't see the philosophy, but then people like Randy and Lou can give a reader that background, that context for that in which the drama can be even more meaningful, as if, as an analogy, you have an art appreciation class and you realize, oh yeah, now I see all that stuff. So that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's the scoop there. And thank you very much, Randy and Lou.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Lou, do you want to say something about your piece in there as well? And you're muted at this time.
Sorry. I'll just reserve making various comments when I make the comments about the book.
Yeah, okay, cool. Maybe we can save that book for the last of this segment.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that makes sense. I know Bernie's here. That this is a few years back now, but Bernie's book, Enthusiastic Mathematics, I really got a lot out of it because I teach philosophy and this helps me. Bernie did a lot of work in connecting a number of interesting, important points in the Western canon to laws of form. I also think that more work needs to be done in connecting laws of form through Buddhism to the Kyoto school in particular, and other contemporary Buddhist philosophers who, interface the whole, like, the Western tradition, and contemporary phenomenology, existentialism. But as far as like the classics, like the modern philosophers like Leibniz, Bernie, you want to say like a couple minutes about your
Buddhism?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Randy. Okay, thanks, Randy. Yeah, so I published this just before the first Laws of Form 50 conference, and it's been something that I've been working on for a couple of decades. What I was really trying to do is develop laws of form as a full philosophy of science and method of science, where the first distinction arising out of the unmarked space is the dynamic that commands all. So starting with that dynamic of the distinction arising out of the unmarked space, that is the dynamic, and that is all that you need to develop your mathematics. So this is what I was working with, and it developed in a way that I didn't really expect, and perhaps that you might not expect. But it basically, most of the action takes place in form dynamics, in the re-entry of the form into its own inner space. The stuff that was first explored properly, I think, by Lou Kaufman and some collaborators in 1979 and around 1980. So that's really what I was working with, and I see laws of form. I emphasize laws of form as an arithmetic and understanding it as an arithmetic. So moving away from logic, seeing arithmetic as what is elementary and what is going on there, and looking at how the arithmetic relates to geometry, and then developing the geometry from the arithmetic. So the arithmetic arises out of a geometry, and then it is then used in interpretations to do mensural geometry, to measure geometry. And so that's the sort of thing I've been working with the mathematics, and I'm very keen for other people to be involved. Now, I have recently been involved with chatting with Kevin German about this, and we're hoping to really move forward. Well, I'm certainly hoping to move forward on the geometry. One of the things that I've been able to develop is an interpretation of form dynamics to present all the diagonals of all the rectangles that you could imagine in an interpretation of laws of form, according to a rule that Luke Kaufman has shown to be a version of Pythagoras' theorem. This is Pythagoras' theorem as you've never seen it before, as expressed in laws of form. So that's probably all I want to say at the moment. To give you some idea, I've published some papers since. I've published some of this stuff in Enthusiastic Mathematics and chapter 10 in the Laws of Form 50 book, and then another paper in Cybernetics and Human Knowing, if you want to have a look at those.
Terrific. Thank you, Bernie. There's another book that is very interesting that centers around Spencer Brown's early work on the NOR gates. Now, I believe that we don't have Lars or Stefan with us here right now, but Sahu, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can just show the book. I have it in front of me. It's this oops, I don't know why that's mirrored, but I guess that's only two can play this game. The cover, right? Is it mirrored or can you see it?
No, you're
straight?
good. We see the design with the NOR only.
Okay, great. So yeah, well, the editors are Stefan, Marcus, Klaus, and Lars, and they had this open call for papers. They had made an announcement on Facebook, which of course the Luhmann group exists there, and there's a lot of members in that group. So they had made a call for papers, and they held this conference at the Inter-University Center in Dubrovnik in Croatia. So I had the pleasure and privilege of reading this TypeScript, this NOR paper that Spencer Brown had published. And we had was it 1 or 2 day conference, and we just discussed. We read the paper and we talked about our responses to it, and it's worth reading the essays included in this book, and just wanted to introduce that. And the design with the NOR paper has been retyped and in here, Spencer Brown's paper, where you can he talks about the mark and the memory. And it's definitely something that if you can get hands on this book or a copy of this paper, it's worth reading. Yeah, and I have my essay in here as well, which is more diagrammatic, and it's sort of yeah, it's a big privilege to be part of this. And of course, Lou and Jim have been very big part of this essay as well, and Lou would be talking about the LOF 50 book as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sahu. And your work from the Laws of Form of 50th anniversary text on circles is maybe appropriate to mention, given that we are also so close to Easter. Lots of circles and ellipses in there, so that's a little oology for you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you. So we have more books that we should probably highlight as well. Leon, Graham, are you able to take another one or identify maybe someone who'd like to talk about their book?
Absolutely. Well, Will Bricken, I believe, wishes to talk about his book series, Iconic Arithmetic, which I think is over 3 volumes. Will? Will, you muted.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, well, it's 3 volumes because I didn't have a decent editor, and so it's just me writing to myself basically. And I was trying to write down the work that I've been doing intermittently for 3 or 4 decades now. Started off with a theme that some of you will recognize is the trying to write a programming language based on laws of form. And in that work, we discovered that, well, eventually you have to deal with numbers. And so we started playing around with how to formulate numerical arithmetics with using the same ideas of the laws of form. So it all turned into basically an exploration of what I've been calling post-symbolic mathematics. Post-symbolic is just referring to the idea that it's spatial rather than textual. And of course, Spencer Brown's mark of distinction is the primary candidate for learning about that. I've been trying personally to not put interpretations on the structures and the laws of form, but looking at how both logic and arithmetic can be expressed in that same language. So what are the communal bases underneath those? And the 3 volumes, this is what they look like. The first one covers 2 themes. Basically, one is an extension of tally marks, the ancient system of making tallies, but just giving them an inside and an outside. And then exploring the spatial dialects that arise from that. And that deals, of course, just with whole numbers. The second part is James algebra, which again was developed in the early 90s. And I had just stacks of papers that during that development that I wanted to get down in a prettier form. And so the important concept in James algebra is Spencer Brown's introduction to the absence of a notation that he gave in the law of crossing. And that turns out to be a very, very powerful computational tool. So all of that's laid out with the formal structures in the first book. And then the second book is just tidying up some of the stuff that needed completion. And I made a fairly lame philosophical attempt to try to argue that we can do math without sets and without logic and without functions, just based on Spencer Brown's work. The third volume is where the interesting stuff is, because I stacked off all of the sort of weird, bizarre discoveries in this approach for last, and we ended up developing an old but new imaginary value, the logarithm of -1, that actually through the notation that Spencer Brown used, shows up as a very major player in numerics. So, you know, that's basically what I've been doing. I can't go into the details here, obviously.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's terrific. As well, you did a lot of work early on in implementing this stuff in computer programs. That's really interesting. That's from your presentation at LOF 2019, I recall.
Yeah, we with Dick Shoup, we actually had a dedicated team of half a dozen people and 7 years to work on it with funding. And what we came across very quickly is that you can write a programming language, but then you need to implement it in something that is already understood. And so if you build laws of form on top of a programming language like C or Lisp, then are you really doing laws of form? And so we tried to get pure about it, and that drove us down into hardware architectures. And of course, the big struggle there is how do you get hardware to do nothing? And we came quite close to finishing that up before it got before the funding ran out.
Yeah, void-based mathematics, void-based programming. I think the future is all void-based.
Indeed.
So I'm gonna go grab Nilla's book. This one's really amazing. This is an artistic, would you call it generally just artistic in addition to, or like, do you want to highlight the artistic aspect of it, Nilla? A book about Stafford Beer and Spencer Brown is in there. And do you want to talk about that, Vanilla? I'll go grab it. I'll go grab a copy because you got to see this book. Oh, and
I
you're
think you
muted.
need to
You're
unmute.
muted, Vanilla.
Bottom here, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Technological incompetence as ever. Yes, thank you for mentioning it, Andy. It's very nice of you. I did a cartoon book about my father, Stafford Beer, and his engagement as a part of that with the laws of form. He employed Spencer Brown during the time he wrote it, and much ribaldry ensued. But I don't want to spend too long on that. It's a cartoon book. It explains the processes Stafford went through, but it's intended for people who aren't multi-degreed. Anyway, I've been holding all through this little vasey thing, which was Spencer Brown's ashtray. You remember it, Graham?
No, I don't actually.
Right, it was on his desk and generally stumped full of cigar stubs.
Cigars, yes, yeah.
So I've been channeling him. And what I've got is Spencer Brown himself. And may I read you a couple of paragraphs from chapter 1 of his autobiography? Those of you that don't know it will, I'm sure, give you a lot of pleasure and explain why we're all so fond of him. Chapter 1, I am born. It is senseless to speculate on what might have happened if what didn't happen did. Senseless yet tempting, and we all do it. For instance, if I had killed my mother when I should have done, not that she didn't deserve it, she cheated my brother and me out of our rightful inheritance, murdered my father, and committed other more nameless crimes against her children before we were old enough to defend ourselves. But I will let the reader discover these things as they were revealed to me by degrees. I was born like others of my kind, with the right number of fingers and toes and everything in its proper place. Maybe it's inevitable that children suffer abuse of one kind or another from one or the other parent. And what happened to me and my brother was not as special as we thought. La-di-da-di-da. Incidentally, I don't want to have to read the whole thing. He believed he shared his birthday with Elizabeth, Raleigh, Blake, and Newton. Now, I'm sure we all know Newton was born on Christmas Day. However, not only was I born at home, I was born alone in the house with my mother, with not another soul present to witness or to assist at the birth. His father went off to get the midwife or the doctor, and they was sent away because his mother was birthing her first child and they thought it would take longer. So they came back later, and then by the time they got home, he was born. Spencer Brown himself. The doctor anesthetized my mother with ether. The smell was unmistakable, to stitch up her wounds. Meantime, I was bundled off to the bathroom with my father and my nurse. Just before this, the nurse had cut my umbilical cord and let it bleed. When it happened, I realized that memories are not carried in the brain, as many of us are obviously led to think, but in the blood. I felt the memories of my birth, of my life before in the womb, and all the racial and prehistoric memories before that, escaping and draining away into the night. But there was worse to come. I think you should all read this. It's a wonderful book. And it's, he only did volume 1. He alas, I found this recently. He was going to write and didn't. Volume 2, Teenage and Young Manhood. Number 3, Full Power. And number 4, Becoming a Legend. This is also very good. The Directory of Tunes and Musical Themes for anyone who's, I don't know who's this aimed at. Andre Previn said it was hilarious. And who could blame him? So yes, still miss him. So let's celebrate. We'll never see his like again, will we?
I don't think so, no.
No. That's me done, Randy.
Okay, yeah. I hope that also you'll maybe jump in later. I think after we do the books, then we can hear more from people. I know we have some people programmed out for this, but I also hope others will jump in and tell us anecdotes, people who knew Spencer Brown personally. But anyway, I got Vanilla's book here.
Oh, thank you.
Here, A Father of Management Cybernetics, Big Data Analysis. That's Vanilla Beer's big data, her big data.
Yeah, it's also got a glossary of cybernetic terms written by Stafford's partner Elena Leonard, and I go to conferences and discover that people don't agree on the terms that we all use all the time, and it's becoming a little bit critical. I suspect several other people have said the same to me, that we need more of a consensus about what we're actually talking about. Although maybe that would spoil the fun.
Here's Nilla, right? That's you. Anyway, lots of good stuff in there.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Sure. So we also have, by the way, to direct everyone to our website, lof50.com. Maybe I'll share this screen real quick. I'll bring us to this page, and this will give us a better idea of some of the different materials that are out there. Sorry, my cursor is going from monitor to monitor. Okay. So at the top of our list here, we have West End Hague. There's it's sort of like a small book that you can print out, or you can order a copy, and it is called Laws of Form, but it's not a book. So it's a pamphlet. I don't know what the distinction is exactly, but same title. But this has some good work in it. R. John Williams, who we have here with us, has his work in there, and Dirk Baker. So maybe one or both of you guys would like to say a couple words about that in a moment. And going down, we have the William Bricken books as well, links. And Leon has this book, Story and Structure, the award-winning Story and Structure. This has won some awards recently. This is a very interesting piece. I bet Leon probably has some PowerPoint somewhere. He can show us a couple little images or something. Maybe we'll do that one next. But let's also see if Bruce Clark wants to mention his book. I believe Bruce is here. Nathaniel Hellerstein. And Philip Francis, Florian Grote. So, I just want to hear some more of these. Okay.
Well, why don't we hear from Leon, whose book was published relatively recently?
Yeah, let's do some more books. Leon?
Oh, Story and Structure is a rather slim volume compared to the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is an application of Spencer Brown's calculus of indication to the analysis of story structure. It is informed by my forays into oral traditions of storytelling, where openings and closings are very important. No story worth its salt starts without a once upon a time that acts like a bridge that takes us from the actual world to the world of story. I use Spencer Brown's sign of recursion for that. It's a re-entry into a different world that is not that different to ours, but yet is separated from it, contained within us as part of our consciousness, and also that manifests within it. It's a nebulous world in which characters follow a series of events, and how we connect those events together makes them a story. Whether those events are rather like the musical dictionary Spencer Brown devised, events that stay neutral, or events that are negative related to the previous one, or positive related to the previous one. You can use forward barbs for the positive, backward barbs for the negative, or if they're uncertain, that's where the double barb comes in. And how those events unfold in stories tells us a bit about the calculus of indications, and the calculus of indication sheds light on how those story structures unfold. For those who are interested in literary theory, I chart the fabula level of story, which is the tale unfolding at the time of the tale, not at the level of sujet, which is the level of the tale at the time of the telling, because you can tell a story in any order. As long as you've got the main events there, it'll still make sense. It includes things like riddles, koans. It sheds new light on why poetic forms like limericks, sonnets, landays have a particular form, and why they lend themselves to particular treatments of subject matter. It ends, as all good stories do, with people living happily ever after. And I hope you all get a copy, engage with it. There are free samples online, and travel towards that happy ending.
Leon, I couldn't have said anything more beautifully ever than anything Leon says. In fact, I did a podcast interview recently on laws of form with what is called the War Machine podcast. The title comes from a concept in Gilles Deleuze, and it is the podcast of the Radical Theology Seminar. And they actually employed a bit of Leon explaining something much more beautifully, simply, clearly than I could by dropping in some Leon in the middle of the podcast, thankfully. So very beautiful. But Leon, you did forget to mention a key element for those who may not be familiar with you, or even all that familiar with Spencer Brown, and that is, right, Leon, that you studied very closely with Spencer Brown, these mathematical structures that then, and I'm curious whether at the time you had discussed how this applies to story, in general, because I think that sort of thing is in the background, the philosophy, the literature, right? And so many other disciplines behind in the background of mathematical work. So just confirm, Leon, you're muted. Confirm for me.
What are you asking, Randy?
You studied with Spencer Brown. I just
Yes.
wanted you to mention that, and maybe say, anything.
Yeah,
about
I was very fortunate in having him take me through the work himself. But I'll say maybe a bit more about that later.
Okay, good. Yeah, we will get to that segment. Considering time, I do want to. I don't want to give short shrift to any of these works. They're all really terrific. So let's do another one. I also want to get to these more anecdotal stories that we all have about Spencer Brown. Some of us knew him very well and can share some more. But I wonder if jump in, folks. Like if let's see here.
Well, would perhaps Lou would like to give as the de facto editor-in-chief of the Loft 50
right
50th anniversary book. Lou, perhaps you'd like to say a little bit about that.
Ooh. Oh,
You're
yeah.
muted, Luke.
Ooh.
Right. You can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to wander through a few things. I thought that it would, oh, is this visible? Wait a minute.
Yes. Laws of Form, GSB-100 birthday.
There you go. Now that should be very visible. So in deciding to talk about our book, I thought I would mention some other books, and then I thought that I was getting a complete list, and then I realized that the list gets away from me completely. But I have a few books I wanted to just point out. But before I get to that, you might enjoy this this slide that I made. I don't know if you're all familiar with the Mark fractal. This is the Mark fractal, and you understand how this is made. Every edge is being replaced by a mark.
Yes.
Over and over forever. And you can have some fun analyzing that. When you get to the end, the infinite end, you find that it's composed of two copies of itself. One horizontal here like this, and the other one vertical like that. Do the slides work? Yeah. So I had made some shots of various books, and these have been mentioned, so I won't spend a lot of time on them, but there's a recent book, and here are some quote books. They're really full issues of cybernetics and human knowing that have occurred in the last few years. This is one with many articles by various people. I was the editor of this one. I'm not the author, although there's an article by me probably. And here's another one. This one contains a lot of the material from the Esalen conference.
And Luke, while you're on that, because I'm sure we won't come back to this necessarily in this meeting, as you know, in 2001, there's a couple issues, volume 8 of Cybernetics and Human Knowing on Peirce and Spencer Brown, and then
yes, that's right. I forgot to put that in.
That's how I first heard about Jack Engstrom's work. In fact,
exactly. I edited that one too. And I'll see if I can. I'm going to augment this little slideshow of images of publications, so I'll find that if I can. Yeah. Good. There are Nathaniel's books, which are very interesting. There's Bernie's book. There are William's books. It should be mentioned the work of Henri Bartoft, which is very closely related to laws of form. Back in the 70s, related to laws of form in relation to physics. And then throughout his life, he became a Goethe scholar, and he still speaks of laws of form in relation to Goethe. If you look at the book, you'll find an appendix about laws of form. And there's Philip's work, which is closely related to laws of form too. There is a little book that I wrote, which is really a set of notes on the map, which needs a revision. And then there's this book series out of which we made, in which we made our recent book. This says volume 53, but this is actually volume 1, and then it became a later edition as volume 53. And this is this could be regarded as about laws of form at the level of chapter 11, perhaps. But here's our book from the Laws of Form conference. And what I thought I would do is just encourage you to get hold of it if you don't already, and to show the table of contents so we can say just a little bit. Well, we'll say very little, but I want to show you the table of contents. So there is a survey of laws of form and mathematical ideas and other ideas by me. There is a very interesting article by Graham about the possibility of relationships with physics via the pre-geometry of space-time. There is a scholarly article by Jim Flagg and myself and Sahu about Spencer Brown's approach to the Riemann hypothesis, and it's more than that because it actually is a readable, I hope, article that will take you from the beginning of that number theory into what Spencer Brown did. And there's an article by William Bricken. There's an article about by Art Collings about his order 4 calculus, and an article by myself and Art that interprets his calculus in terms of a square root of the mark. An article about modulators, a remembrance of his own personal intellectual revolution by Nathaniel Hellerstein, how he came to change his logic to the logic of the imaginary values, and there's an article by Bernard Stewart on simplicity in primary algebra. There's an article by Burney on Platonic view of laws of form. There's the article about the mark by Akiem Helming. There is Philip Michelin's article. There is Diego Rapoport's Klein-Bottle logophysics, metaphysics related to laws of form. There's Randy's article about the first distinction in philosophy. There's a lot in this book. It's remarkable to look at the book or the table of contents. There's just so much in this book. As you see, there's an excellent philosophical article by Christina Weiss. There's Jack Engstrom's article about the epistemology of laws of form. There's Fred Cummings' article about epistemology. There's Dirk Becker's article about using forms and reentry forms in sociological readings. There's Philip Francis's article about illumination in relation to laws of form. Florian Groth's article about uncertainty and forms of uncertainty. There's Leon's article about narrative. There's Sahu's article, diagrammatic and circular. There's Cliff Barney's article, which hails back to the Esalen conferences. There is Tom Short's article about Douglas Harding and distinction and the distinction that you make in the world in relation to yourself. Have you a head or not? And Vanilla Beer's article of story and reminiscence. And that's the list. So if you're looking for a longer read than Spencer Brown's book, you can't go wrong by looking at our quite large doorstop that we have produced. I want to make a few more comments beyond talking about the book. Here's a diagram that should have been in our article about the Riemann hypothesis. I say that you were looking, when you look at this diagram here, this computer-generated diagram, you are looking at Spencer Brown's proof of the Riemann hypothesis.
Yeah, very close to
what you were, excuse me, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this is very close to a proof, Lou. It's extraordinary. It's great to see it diagram this way.
Yeah, this computer-generated diagram shows the way the cumulative Mobius function varies in relation to a cumulative random variation. And you see how it hangs in there around 0, way below any cumulative random variation. But if you can show that the statistics of the cumulative Mobius is below the statistics of a cumulative random, you have proved the Riemann hypothesis. And so you were looking at the proof of the Riemann hypothesis, at least in the opinion of the computer. And it's hard to understand why you can't write, well, never mind, I don't want to go into arguments. It's just that the computer makes certain things clearer than logic sometimes. And then another book that we didn't mention is, of course, this version of Laws of Form, which is published by Boehmier Verlag and Thomas Wolfe, and contains all that number theory. It's really wonderful that we have this version of Laws of Form containing not just the original Laws of Form, but all of the number theoretic and other excursions that he worked on. So that's some story about books. And this is a knot which was colored blue by Enrico Mazzi the other day, and I was running this knot for quite a long time, and I think it's a very beautiful knot. But why am I talking about knots? Well, because now I'm reminiscing a bit. And Spencer Brown once sent me this poem. I don't know if it was a poem or a paragraph, but I make it into a poem. The poem's title is What is a Knot? And the poem is, if it is in the plane, then it is not. If it is not in the plane, then it is not. And you have to read it in order to discriminate.
It's a very beautiful poem.
I think so. One more reminiscence. He once wrote to me, Dear Lou, I do not mind if you name algebras Brownian after me, but how would you like it if I referred to you as F-man?
I think of this all the time.
One mathematical comment. I like the following correspondence between Cantorian ordinals and expressions in laws of form. The correspondence is that omega to the A will be written as A cross. So now we count out all the expressions in order, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then we get to omega. And then we get to omega plus 1, or omega to the omega plus 1, which is what I illustrated here. This is omega to the omega, plus is next to omega and 1. So that any expression becomes an ordinal. And any ordinal of this kind becomes an expression. And so you have this explosion at the beginning of laws of form from one distinction or no distinction to the infinity of the ordinals all at once, if you like to think of it that way. And the re-entering mark occurs just above all of these at the point when omega is equal to omega to the at the ordinal where j, where omega to the j is equal to j, where you get omega to the omega to the omega forever. One could talk about a lot of mathematical things. I just point you to that one because I'm enjoying it. And I'll stop here with this temple from Bhutan, which is a very nice laws of form expression.
Thank you, Lou. Terrific. So I wonder if any of our organizers or any of the participants would like to mention any other works. We have maybe, we'll squeeze in a couple more before we go to personal stories, anecdotes, reminiscences, that sort of stuff. We can also, if anyone thinks of it later, I'm totally open to hearing, something that we're forgetting at this time. But one thing I wanted to mention, Francis, did you want to say something real quick? You got to unmute.
A couple of quick questions related to the previous speakers. One of them had to do with Vanilla. I wanted to ask Vanilla what years that G and her father were collaborating, and perhaps heard too. That was one of my questions. And my second question was the book on the use of the NOR gate, which I've now retitled that the nanny gate, as you probably have noticed. And that was the point where I started using, well, in the probably before I even met Spencer Brown, for that purpose, for design of digital circuits in our research lab at Cal at the time. So, I was wondering what kind of transistor that is depicted on the cover, because it looks to me like there's no knot in that circuit at a quick glance, although admittedly my electrical engineering is a bit rusty. So is that a special kind of transistor that includes an inverter in the base semiconductor?
Yeah, so while Vanilla's looking at the year, maybe Sahu can mention the circuit question, the question of the cover of the design of the NOR gate.
Is Vanilla there still?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm just looking up the year. Forgive me, I don't carry numbers in my head.
Yes, just when you all were collaborating is very interesting.
Yeah.
Stafford was also involved in the Maturana group and the work with Heinz von Forster. I first became acquainted to him through my early acquaintance with Heinz von Forster, about probably starting in '73.
Right. Well, I haven't put a date on this. Spencer Brown worked at Sigma, so Stafford started Sigma in la-di-da. When was this? I am so bad on dates. Oh, in 1961, he set up Sigma, Science in General Management, first international consultancy agency, and Spencer Brown worked for that. Spencer Brown was fired as soon as Stafford left, but he followed Stafford to IPC, telling Stafford he needed a job so he could finish the laws of form. And so he worked there.
But Stafford was also doing some work for Umberto Maturana's group, yes?
Sure.
That would have been probably the very late '60s, early '70s.
Probably. Yes, forgive me. As I say, it's all very hazy, the past, and I don't know dates well. But I tell you what's a good book on all this. If you need proper dates, is it Michael Rosen? There's a very good book in the operational research series about Stafford. Very fine paper, very detailed. Oh, and the other good book, which is also very detailed, is Andy Pickering's book on the British cyberneticians, which I love. I mean, it's a really good resource.
Pardon me, you alluded, Vanilla, to some times that you and your father and he worked together on some occasions. I was wondering what years those were.
Don't know, 60s to 70s.
So early, yes.
Early, I guess, yes, because I remember when I first heard of Spencer Brown, I was a very young woman, a child, so that would have been in the early 60s.
So this is pre-Laws of Form as a book, then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely pre-Laws of Form. And it was when Spencer Brown was experimenting with acid, because he told Stafford some of his acid experiences, LSD.
Yes.
And Stafford told me. I must say, I've never felt the desire to take this stuff. Probably as a result. Yeah.
Well, it's all very acceptable now.
Oh yes, indeed it is. And in fact, it's probably de rigueur now.
Virtually.
Anyway, I'm sorry not to be more helpful on actual dates, but there are books where you will find that information.
So maybe we can actually, Sahu, maybe we can skip the discussion of the image of the cover, the particular circuit. I want to move on. We're running low on time.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with Randy. I mean, I could just show you real quick, like just a picture, and then we can, this is the first page out. I mean, I encourage you to get a copy of this if you can. And, this is it's really the same as what he does in chapter 11, like the way he's using the mark in the circuit. So, but this is the the build up of it right in the front, the first page. And I mean, it mentions other papers in Mullard, but I don't know if we have access to his Mullard technical papers. That's the other part that is interesting. But yeah, thank you, Francis.
The cover illustration is a little different than that, you see, so it suggests it might be a different kind of transistor, but.
Oh no, this is the exact same picture right here, the first one. If you want to see, like this is the same one. It's just reduced.
Do you see what I mean? The cover pictures, it has a different.
Yeah.
The base of the transistor is a little different. I've been looking.
I see what you mean. Okay.
Recently, I've been looking back at some old thoughts I had about the relationship between logic and the solid state junction. All right, so this is.
All right. Well, okay. So very good. So I do want to open up now the like personal anecdote kind of part of this. And I actually want to do that not by going to one of the people on the program. I'm actually wondering if George Kasha, who is here and hasn't necessarily been so prominent in this circle, but George, I was talking to Charles Stein just yesterday, actually, whose book on Hermes Trismegistus just came out, and he's got a cool new book on Parmenides coming out soon. But George, Charles Stein, and Art Collins, you're up there, right? In the same sort of area. I'm not sure, Art, whether you go back with these guys, but I know these guys at least used to meet together with the philosophers, with Ed Casey, and correct me if I'm wrong on these things. But I know you guys had a philosophical group, and there was some laws of form interest or discussion happening back then. So one of the things I was kind of curious about, if you're still, yeah, George, there you are. If you can say anything about laws of form in those philosophical circles, I don't know whether you crossed paths with Spencer Brown himself, but I'm curious about that scene. And you're muted.
No, yeah, hi. Well, no, it's a bit of a surprise that you would mention me or call on me. I don't consider myself to be at the level of this discussion here about Spencer Brown. I'm a poet. Charles Stein is a poet. Laws of Form was tremendously powerful for us in the 70s when we were just, I would say, forming our poetics, a kind of open poetics, you might say. And so I won't attempt to say anything about it. You don't have time for me to say anything real about this. But yeah, I mean, we never met Spencer Brown. We regretted that. But yeah, Ed Casey and I continue to collaborate. And yeah, there's a strong current philosophical interest, but it isn't in the mathematical domain that you folks are in. So, it's more of a philosophical domain. And for me, it has to do with the nature of language and the way that language continuously generates out of nothing, and a poetics that doesn't rely upon previous formal ideas of form or structure, but arises always as its own first distinction at every given instant. How does that work? So that's the concern. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, George. In fact, so Ed Casey just retired. We just had his retirement celebration here at Stony Brook, and I just put it on YouTube. This was last week. Ed had some familiarity, not familiarity with laws of form, but with John Lilly and his work. And I thought maybe this would be a cool little segue for me, because when I first discovered laws of form, it was by reading these California philosophers like John Lilly, like and others like that. Timothy Leary, not a California philosopher, but you know the style I'm referring to, right? These voyagers, these journeyers, right? And so for me, and for John Lilly, the perspective on laws of form, which I think a lot of us appreciate here, though we might dwell in notation systems or computer programs or mathematics, pure and simple, or whatever, for me, Spencer Brown really was that figure of the Tathagata that he maybe wavered about identifying with at different times, of his life, but really, it is a void-based thinking, and the world the point is to recognize, to understand that the world, whether of language or the real physical world around us, and this could be as well in physical cosmology as well as just the familiar human world that we experience, however you want to put it, everything is void based, right? Everything comes from this void and returns to this void, and what it is sustained on is the void, you know, and the presumption of a distinction is what all the mutually co-arising forms is based on. And that, of course, Spencer Brown identifies with the Pratitya Samutpada doctrine of mutual interdependent co-origination of everything, right? So, I mean, this is really paradigmatically significant as far as, you know, all the different paradigm shifts and the many and constant paradigm shifts that science goes through as we ordinarily conceive of it these days. But the big paradigm shifts, the kind of like Carl Jaspersian kind of axial age, Jean Gebser, that sort of stuff, you know, the big picture history of human consciousness type stuff, even in anthroposophy and theosophy, you know, these big picture events, these are more in sync with the paradigm expressed by a kind of philosophia perennis or even prisca theologica, etc. All these cool words for first philosophy, you know. So of course, naturally, first philosophy and the first distinction is something. I'm sorry, Graham, was that you?
Well, we just got to press on, Randy. I'm concerned about the time. We've hit the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
And there are lots of other people who want to speak. So
so I just wanted to I'll wrap up. I just want to say that, you know, I called up Spencer Brown shortly after getting into this stuff and started talking to him. So that's how I know him, is as a friend over the phone. I'd call him, he'd call me, and he'd talk to different people in my family as well. So he was just like a cool, normal human being, you know, who we'd talk to. And eventually I got around to visiting him out there in England a couple times when he was in the nursing home facility. I went to Horningsham and I couldn't find him. Graham had already helped him into the nursing facility out there. But so anyway, that's my my little tale of generally how I know Spencer Brown, you know. So there's a lot. I even recorded some of our conversations in the past as well. I don't have those. I might be able to find them at some point, but you know, my stories are more inside of those recordings or from what I can remember in here. So anyway, I have stories, but I'm also curious to hear from some of the people we had identified as folks who might say something personally about Spencer Brown. Graham, do you want to point out maybe one of them at this point?
Well, sure. I mean, there are quite a few, but Thomas Wolfe, would you like to speak as Maxwell's, as I called him, or Richard, I think, as you addressed him, as his German translator?
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't think I want to go into the story how I came to be his translator again, because I suppose most of you know it already. I want to instead tell you how do you hear me? Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. It was so quiet out there. That I became to know him personally, because you see, actually, it started with the four-color theorem. I was all these hints he gave in laws of form, and I wanted him to explain his proof that he, of course, never gave in the first editions of laws of form to me. And so I invited him over to join me at my place, which turned out to be a complete fiasco, of course. He was he was used to very high temperatures at home. he used to go around naked, I think. And unfortunately, he didn't do that at my place, but still he liked it very, very warm. And I sleep under the roof, actually, of my house. And it was a tiny house at that time, and I offered him, of course, my bed, and volunteered to sleep in the bed where my daughter slept when she was visiting me, right on the very rooftop. And he insisted that I turn on the electric heater to the max. Of course, the hot air rose. And it was a terrible night. And we both agreed this couldn't go on. And so, fortunately, Michael, the guy who offered you his work in Wolfram, he had a place where Richard could stay. And so he moved to Vienna proper, and I spent many days, evenings with him then, and there it was, I think, fine for everybody. Yeah, of course, he failed utterly to explain the proof of the four-color theorem, which is in its original form really, really complicated, involving things like parity passes and whatnot. Anyway, I think this inspired Richard to resume his work on the four-color theorem, and he came up with these alternative ideas about the Peterson as a nucleus of uncolorability and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you were not only close friends with Spencer Brown, but you were maybe like really dear friends, right? I mean, you guys must have had some good times together, especially considering he maybe trusted you with his stuff, right?
Yeah, which came as a complete surprise to me, of course. He never told me that he intended to do so. He just confronted me one day. Yeah, we had some good time. He was actually he was very kind to my daughter. He bonded with my daughter, who was, when was this? It must have been, I think, in 96 or 97, about this time. I think 96 it was. So she was 10, 11, 12, and yeah, they quite took together. He even invented a game for her. It got lost. It was called Fly, I know. It was a rather simple board game, but he just invented it for her, and they played, and they liked it. Loved playing.
Cool. And you were his translator into German, right?
Yeah.
So you want to say something about that real quick, and then we'll continue on?
Well, so I have to recap the story. Sorry for all of you. I've heard it 2 or 3 times, because this was really magic, of course, because I translated Laws of Form basically and initially for myself. I wanted to understand it. And because of this and a general phase of disorientation in my life, I must confess, I decided I could do translations. And so when a friend came up and asked, I said, oh yeah, I will do it. And he wanted translations from texts of magic, English, chaos magic, mostly, but not only, into German. And he got this publisher who wanted these texts to be translated. And
Yeah, that's Johanna Bohmeyer.
And then this was Johanna Bohmeyer, exactly. And so I translated 2 or 3 books, like I don't know, 8 Sabbaths for Witches and blah blah. And I decided to ask her later on, because I knew I had this translation of Law's Form in my computer, resting in my computer, of course, without all the nice marks, but the text. And I thought, oh, well, it's not so bad after all, and there is still no translation. And so I asked her if she knew some in the publishing scene where I could go with this translation. And she said, oh, big secret, I accidentally know that Surkamp is going to publish that. And of course, this never materialized. I think because of the Tata Hagata stuff in one of the forewords, and they got very, Richard got very cross with them for not wanting to publish that. Yeah, and so she called me and said I should send in my translation one day because maybe she would do it. And I had no idea, of course, that they had become lovers in the meantime and already separated again, I think.
And just to be clear, you're talking about Johanna Bohmeyer and our George Spencer Brown.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, well, it came as to tell you, it was one of the most magical things, truly, that ever happened to me.
Thank you, Tom.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I had hoped that that she would be able to tell us some stuff too. That she might be here. I think her English is not very fluent though, right? Okay, so. Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. Graham, do you want to identify another one of our folks from the
is Andrew Crompton still with us? Andrew, are you here? Andrew?
I am.
Oh, Andrew, would you like to say a word or two about your connection with Spencer Brown?
Well, I've my brother-in-law gave me his book in 1977. I've been interested in it ever since. It's I followed it all my life. I spoke to him on the phone a couple of times, and I've spent half my life thinking about it. What it means, you're all going to tell me. That's it.
Well, you've been thinking about it longer than most of us, Andrew. Perhaps you should be telling us.
I was astonished when I read Only Two Can Play This Game, because it went from something extremely logical and pure to something very strange indeed. And I followed up all the references he gave in that book and found them all very fruitful. So while I have thought him to be bonkers, when I followed it up, I found it, in fact, to be extremely interesting. So although he appears to be weird and fraudulent, in fact, when you get into it, he's very real indeed. And that is for me, that's the key thing. He is very genuine, even though he seems not to be. Also a great Englishman, eccentric, unique, and rooted in history. So I feel he should be a very famous man, but he's not. And perhaps it's our job to give him the posthumous fame he so obviously craved in his life on Earth.
We're working on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a true believer. I believe that more people should be true believers, that he was the Tathagata. That's very good. Why not entertain the possibility and live it as a reality as he did for a while? So, possibly even during the retractions of that identification. Graham, do you want to find another individual?
Yeah, is Jim Flagg with us? Oh no, have we lost Jim?
He was here, but yeah.
Maybe I should jump in just for a second, because I know that as much, I think, as my interest into the focality inspired Richard to resume his work and to review it, it was James's remark upon the work on primes between squares that, you've proven the Riemann hypothesis, that Richard first became aware of the possibility that he could have really done so, and from now on he really got into it. So it was James, I think, who has to take part of the credits for the proof, the final proof of the Riemann hypothesis as we see now in the published.
No, there's no question about that. It was through James that George became stabilized in relation to learning about all that number theory. Whenever George had a technical question about the number theory, Jim could tell him more.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he told me many times on telephone. Yeah, he had talked to James.
Yeah, it's a great pity that he's not. He seems to have disappeared. I didn't notice him saying goodbye in the chat. Maybe he'll come back. But in the meantime, Moshe Klein perhaps would like to say a word or two. Moshe?
Okay, thank you very much. I met Spencer Brown for a period of 7 years. We have a regular phone conversation, about 1 hour every week. I met him in 2011 in England. It was a great experience. We eat together in the restaurant. He ride me with his car. I'd like to share with you a short movie clip showing my work in kindergarten, if possible to share screen.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. If it's just a few minutes, that'd be terrific.
No, it's 1 minute. 1 minute.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure.
No, what I want to say before the movie that I'm working for many years in kindergarten, and I was very much enjoyed to introduce laws of form in kindergarten in Israel. And Spencer Brown was very happy for that because he felt that the adults don't understand him. He felt that maybe the young children, when they are in kindergarten, maybe they are able to grasp the ideas of laws of form. So he was very happy from this project. And every day of his birthday, I organized a conversation with in the kindergarten to this Spencer Brown, and they sing for him happy birthday. He was very happy to hear the voice of the children singing happy birthday. So if I be able to share the screen, I'll show you a short movie, very short. Here you can see I translate the distinction, the laws of form to a circle made of bamboo. And here you can see a short clip.
מה יש שלך לחקור 3 בורות? מה ציירת? בור בתוך בור. תנסה לתרגם את זה בעזרת הבבור. בור.
Now they try to check the possibility of circle, but it is equivalent to the laws of form.
לא צודק? יש כאן 3 בורות? כן. וזה שונה ממה שעשה אלון? לא, יש גם כאן.
אוקיי, מי רוצה להתחיל? אני. וואו, איזה הבנות. חכה, אני אקשה עליכם. בואי תתחילי ראשונה. תוציא. אוקיי.
In now they apply the laws of form. You see circle and circle, you put it in the box. And what is the left is 1. Yes.
זה משחק טוב?
So, yes, so this is what I can say. I think that the children very much enjoy to apply laws of form in kindergarten, and I think that they fresh thinking is very much fit to the revolutionary of laws of form. So this is what I want to share with you, and great inspiration for me, the discussion with him, and also in my own research in mathematics.
Thank you, Moshe. Yeah,
and you see, Moshe, you're teaching them about the transfinite ordinals.
The what?
You are teaching them the transfinite ordinals.
I will show you one more thing, if you don't mind, because of your question.
I'm stating something. I'm not asking you a question. I'm stating that you are teaching your children about Cantor's transfinite ordinals. You have them moving them on the table.
Yes. Here is a letter. I show you a letter that Spencer Brown. Here is a letter from Professor Spencer Brown. And notice he wrote, "Dear fellow members of the Society of Hippasus, if you don't know, Hippasus was a student of Pythagoras who discovered the irrational number. So I organize a society, we call it the Society of Hippasus. It is a group of my students, and he wrote a letter to the Society of Hippasus. He himself became a member of the Hippasus Society. I have 2 letters from Spencer Brown and also and I will send it to all the group by email, these 2 letters and okay, so yes, that's it.
Terrific.
The interview.
Thank you. And that was something very special to Spencer Brown, that you were doing that because, you know, he always felt, and I think we all feel it as well as agree in concept, that this stuff is something that little children pick up much more easily than any adult, and perhaps even especially mathematicians.
Can I answer Bernie's question in
the
chat line?
Yeah.
Just briefly, Bernie, it's what I said in my talk briefly, that the laws of form expressions are the same structure as Cantor's transfinite ordinals. So it's funny to realize that something which is regarded as such a high level thing is actually something that you can teach to people in kindergarten.
Interesting, yes.
May I contribute to that? I think it really intrigued Richard, and he liked it very much because he always had postulated that any proof given by anybody to anybody was not, at least not so good, not perfect, if it couldn't be taught to kindergarten children. These were his words. This was how he expressed his opinion, and
Indeed,
this
and
was,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and this where he so utterly failed in his first attempt of the four-color theorem. This was not kindergarten, and he recognized it.
So I wonder if we might want at this point, since we are over on time, to move into our final segment, which is talking about future plans, the future of the Spencer Brown Society, that sort of stuff. Graham, what do you think? Where are we at?
Well, first of all, is there anyone else who has a short personal reminiscence of Spencer Brown? I mean, that is really the core of the evening as it is here.
I wanted to mention one thing very briefly. In 1974, I entered a seminar that was originally organized by Jerry Suarez, who was here in the meeting. He's left. He organized a seminar on laws of form. He had been inspired. Oh, he still is here. He can say a few words. I think Jerry should say a few words about that laws of form seminar that you created.
Okay. I took a workshop from John Lilly at Esalen on talking with dolphins. And John Lilly introduced us to a number of things, including some practices that was taught by his Argentinian Sufi mystic teacher. And he also introduced us to Tai Chi Chuan and to laws of form, both of which captivated me. I returned home to Chicago, found a teacher for Tai Chi. Of course, I found no teacher for laws of form, but I had the book. And I taught myself laws of form, about 1970, 71, 72, something like that. And I found, going through laws of form, that the method of learning that I found myself practicing was the same method that I used for Tai Chi. Every time I would practice, I would start at the beginning and then continue. And I developed this notion that Tai Chi, that the movements were, this was part of the teaching, that the regular practice that one does is a natural sequence of the body coordinated with the energies of the universe. And you follow your teacher and you let your body teach you the actual specific movements for your own body. And that, as you learned it, as your body learned it, that you had to stop thinking about it as it became automatic, that you would find yourself in tune with the energies of the universe, of the space around you, of the people around you. And in going through laws of form, it had the same thing for me, that each statement in laws of form is a thought. And as I engaged in the thought, I learned it. It ingrained itself, or rather, it aligned itself with something that was already there. So very slowly going through laws of form, after a while, I got this group together, including Lou, and we did the same thing. We worked through it together. As I go through it, I found the forms in myself. Laws of form, after a fashion, is a map of how humans think. Basically, very simply, this is how we cognitively relate to the world. And consequently, all of the world that we can cognitively relate to has that form. Because this is how we, this is like our mental hands. So the world is, in that respect, like us. The world, and now we, from our understanding of the sciences, physics, biology, evolution, we have, as a species, evolved in this world in coordination with it, the biological world, the ecosystem, the physical world, gravity, light, etc., etc. So we're part of it. And the form that has developed in us for cognitively related to everything is part of everything. So laws of form applies to absolutely anything that you can think of. If you can't think of it, well, maybe it doesn't apply, laws of form doesn't apply to it, but you have no way of knowing that. So it coordinates with all of our philosophy. And that's why we find everything in it, because how we find things is via the form, which is us. This is what we do. Laws of form is the pattern of how we relate to the world. It's very simple. Of course, kindergarten children can relate to it.
Thank you.
I could go
Okay,
on, but I'd be saying the same thing over and over again, as we are all doing. We're saying the same thing over and over again at this very abstract or very deep level. Everything that we say has to have the form, and the laws apply to it.
We do need, because we're over, I do want, Jack is next. So I want Jack to tell his story, but also I notice, George Kasha, you have your hand up. Maybe there's a burning statement, question, remark.
Quick statement. Chuck Stein and I have been practicing Tai Chi for 50 years. And it was absolutely clear to us from the beginning that we were thinking in the same domain when we were studying laws of form and doing Tai Chi. And what
Thank you, George. Yes.
I would also mention Tibetan Dzogchen. I'm not going to talk about it. I just want to mention, I put it in a note. Tibetan Dzogchen is the deepest way we found of thinking this matter. And in poetics, we call it 0-point poetics. Okay. And we've written about this quite a bit. I'd love to be on a mailing list with anybody who wants to continue talking about it. So.
Very cool.
Okay, Jack, you've said that you need to go in a few minutes, so please have the floor.
Thank you very much. I ran across a book, Laws of Form, I don't know, November 72, I'm not sure. Anyway, is Francis still here?
Yes, I'm here.
And you put on a conference in the Penthe.
By there in
Float.
that was in 76.
Float.
Did you come to that?
Well, first it was the Penthe, right?
Well, it was adjacent near it.
No, near Esalen. It was yeah.
But both are true, and I think we might have had lunch at the Penthe.
So before Spencer Brown came with other people, February of 77 or something, but in November of before that, Varela's friend Juan Bulnes, Chilean, had come.
Remember him.
There was kind of a pre-meeting. Yes. Did we call anything on that?
Oh, I remember Juan.
Yeah. Anyway, but then
Francisco and Umberto Maturana turned up at some point with Heinz von Forster.
Yeah. Okay. So, but then Spencer Brown wasn't there then. But then the follow-up, for which that was the pre-meeting, I'm guessing it would have been February 77. Is that possible?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank you. So now, and of course, there was Spencer Brown and Lily.
Yes, that was in the spring of 1977, and that's the one. John Lilly, Heinz von Forster, Gregory Bateson, and Werner Erhard were all there. Yes, and Varela,
and all that. All that stuff. Claudio Naranjo. So anyway,
so you caught that meeting.
I was there.
Oh, you were there. Okay, very good. That's where we met.
I was there. Yeah. Yes, okay. But you were Busco then. So
go on.
You were Busco then. Anyway,
well, I still am, but
okay, thank you. So anyway,
we don't talk about our mafia relations.
Yeah, no. Anyway, so then and I interacted with Werner. I asked for anyway, and I think that's where Spencer Brown showed me because I had written him he didn't ever answer. He didn't answer. I'd written him that I was interested in his laws of form numbers. That was in the American edition. You can get a full or partial algebra of numbers.
Yeah.
And he showed on a little blackboard there at your event I think on the Sunday morning, how
paper scrolls. It was paper scrolls, and at the end he rolled it up and put a ribbon on it and said, "Send this to the British Museum."
Okay, but what he showed me was, in his notation, you can represent, say, 2 times 2 times 2, and the J2 primary algebra allows you to collect the base from the product to give you the exponential 2 cubed, and this is what I wanted to follow up on. Now, so I got to see Spencer Brown, and also I asked Werner Erhard. I said, well, did you get your stuff from? Did you get your stuff in Est from Spencer Brown? And Werner said, well, I got it myself. Anyway, there's a whole story there. But then in Easter '77, I received a phone call. Hello, Spencer Brown here. Would you like? I brought that paper you wanted. His 1961 Laws of Form Numbers paper, Algebra of Natural Numbers. I'm giving a lecture at Stanford. Would you like to attend? I said, yeah. Can I bring my friend? Oh, yes, that would be fine. And so then me and Charles Reed attended, and then all these people were there. Vasha Kafatal's office and so anyway, so there's a whole story there, but I did meet Spencer Brown there. And then Charles and I would visit him in Palo Alto over the next months and stuff. So I've only met him a few times, but aside from my meeting him, his work is still one of my major concerns, to see what Spencer Brown saw, and I honor him for that. I'm done.
And happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
So could I have a question for everyone.
Okay, like 1 minute, because we're
one minute. So does anyone recall his use of the term e-birthday? As in email, e-birthday. Did anyone hear that? I think it's in the 3rd book. He uses it in the personal recollection. So he said he had an e-birthday, and he gave the particular date, I believe. Yes. Does anyone remember what that date was? In contrast to the historical.
You mean E for enlightenment?
Yes. In contrast to his historical birthday, or zoological birthday, if you will. Did anyone else hear that term?
It's in here.
He wrote about it in a letter.
Yes. So since this is a centennial of his birthday, I thought I would bring in the e-birthday and the two cups that he used when we were first conversing. I think it was in '76 on the phone and correspondence. You see, and in addition to the big blue ball, you'll all remember from our symposium last summer. He rolled outside here, I'm afraid. But the 2 cups, you see, the one of genus 0 and one of genus 1. And those in relation to the ball, to work out all the figures with the 2nd degree. And that was the key to the e-birthday, as he explained it to me in '76, before he'd come to that conference at Big Sur in early '77. So
yeah, it was
I'll leave you with that.
1423 hours Greenwich Mean Time on the 7th of September 1970, page 146 of A Lion's Teeth.
There it is.
So I think, Graham, do you want to continue with some more stories from people for a minute, because we are terribly over?
I'm off mute, Graham.
We didn't. There.
Graham, you're still muted.
What?
Yeah. Sorry.
Where is he?
Yeah, well, would people like to hang on for a little while, or do people want to go? I know that Jack wants to go. And how about you? Just stuck your thumb up, Bernie. How about you? Do you want to hang on? Because I'm mindful that it's some or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning in Melbourne, or something like that. I mean, I'm happy to be here for another hour or two, but I don't know what everyone else thinks. But is there anyone else?
I've got no meetings. I got no meetings booked for 5:30 a.m. Graham.
Okay. So, but is there anyone else who has any personal anecdotes or reminiscences that they've not yet said?
I don't want to abuse my power, but I do want to mention that I am the only one that I know who Spencer Brown declared to be a member of his Tarati, the Creative Trust at times he calls it, or Trust for Creative Education.
The Sentinel Trust.
Yeah, I asked him, what is my rank? What is my title in his secret society? And he explained I'm a sentinel. So there's that. And I did want to ask if anyone else also has this title. I didn't get to meet other members of this very secret, exclusive society. So I just wanted to voice that in connection to these things. And then I also did want to mention that in one of the Cybernetics and Human Knowing journals, this one, volume 26, we have the transcripts for the Esalen conference, specifically the 1973 conference. And, this year it's the 50th anniversary of that. So I've been working on trying to get the conference called Thinking the Float Tank going. I approached Esalen. I then went to my school. We're actually going to be doing it as part of West Den Haag's Gödel Escher Bach group exhibit that's running from the end of this month on into August in The Hague at the former U.S. Embassy at West Den Haag, at their museum, where they've also hosted our 2019 conference as a museum piece. And our 22 conference, they recorded everything and made a lot with that material. So now it's Escher's birthday, and as part of that, they have an exhibit on the Hofstadter book, Gödel Escher Bach, and they've agreed to have me host this Thinking the Float Tank conference. So there will be more details on that to come, but I just have to solidify a few things with them, and then I can start approaching my keynotes and advertising this event. But of course, it'll be a combination of laws of form related things, as well extensions in phenomenology and cybernetics. So it should be an interesting conference. There might even be a float tank in the building at this conference. So just something to think about, because I know the whole John Lilly connection was very important for a lot of people coming into laws of form. So with that, we might be beginning the segment, Graham and Leon, don't you agree, of things to come? I also agree that we can stick around for a minute, but I don't think we should stretch it too much.
No, okay.
But I do want to hear stories. I'm happy to accommodate some more stories of Spencer Brown if people want to come up and give their personal accounts as well.
Sure. Well, the upcoming things are the creation of the Spencer Brown Society, and as I said earlier, we'll be circulating copies of the Constitution pretty shortly. We're looking to create, or to found anyway, a documentary. We're looking at that. Leon, have you got any?
I'm just excited to see what happens, and I want to hear stories.
Okay, well, I've got plenty of stories, but in view of the time, I put most of, or not most, but I put some stories. Oh, bye, Enrico. I put a lot of stories in Cybernetics and Human Knowing, which is probably worth a read. But in contrast to Randy and in brevity, I would say he was not the Tathagata. He was a very naughty boy, to quote Monty Python, or misquote Monty Python.
It's possible the Tathagata is also a naughty boy.
Yes, that's right. But what happened to Jim? I'd really wanted to hear from Jim, but he's gone, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, he may have had to sign off.
Yeah. Well, the next section we had planned, if no one else wishes to. Oh, Francis, you want to? Oh, you're going, Francis.
We've got to head out. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, Francis.
Thank you for your contribution, Francis. Yeah. The next section that we had planned was for a general discussion, which I'd imagine would run on for an hour, but obviously we can't really do that, or maybe we can. I don't know. What do people think? What would you like to do?
Maybe we should raise a toast to his memory now, and then go into a free session.
Yeah, and then people who wish to stay on can stay on. Yeah. Well, all right. Let me pour myself some wine a moment. Your glass is empty, Andrew.
Drinking nothing.
Nothing to the Ock. Ock and seltzer. Well, okay, let's have a toast to Spencer Brown on his 100th birthday, or what would have been his 100th birthday. And thank you for his immense contribution to the foundations of mathematics. Thank you, George.
Yeah.
So like Graham, I'm in principle open to some more discussion, but I think perhaps we need to decide that we'll give ourselves another short amount of time, like 10 minutes, let's say. This is already a long meeting for a lot of us, but there's things we gotta get onto as well. Graham, do you agree?
Well, well, I don't know. Can the channel simply be left open for those who wish to?
Yeah, I can make someone else host. But maybe I'll end the recording in just like 5 minutes.
Sure. Okay.
As far as general discussion, there's a lot of special sciences that this laws of form applies to. But I'm also curious whether, in contrast to special sciences, we have some discussion about the very generality of it, the universality of laws of form, these most primordial notions of the void or the unmarked state specifically, because I think that transcends stipulated definitions of void, and the first distinction in particular. And then after that, there's a number of other archetypes that can be translated into different systems, different philosophies, different special sciences as initials, primordial axioms for further developments. But I really feel that Spencer Brown connects us in a very important way through those inventions of the concept, of the unmarked state and the first distinction, and then further how the two laws operate and so on, to something that few others in the history of ideas have broken through to. So I find personally that philosophy is the best area in which to discuss such generality, but it's not limited to that. Of course, there's a philosophical dimension to all those special disciplines. But I just wanted to dwell here for a moment, my special place in the universality of it,
Well, for me, it's very much the mathematics rather than philosophy or anything else. It's the mathematics which is sharp and defined and clear and pristine. And when one is, as I've said before, when one is an experienced practitioner in the primary algebra, very experienced, it becomes almost like a living thing. It's absolutely extraordinary the way manipulations can occur in the algebra. It's astonishing. But I did have one question, maybe for Lou and for the mathematicians here, which I'll just write out a moment, if my pen works.
In the meantime, I would like to know if some of the mathematicians tried to find how it is a division algebra.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
I thought it would be nice to turn primary algebra into a division algebra, like the real numbers or the complex numbers or Hamiltonian.
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you saying how do you develop real numbers or rational numbers from laws of form? We have various ways to do that.
I would like to know how to construct something similar to an ideal in terms of the...
an ideal in an algebra?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a technical question and shouldn't be brought up here, but we could have a discussion about that. Write me an email and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Thanks, that would be most helpful for my current problems.
Yeah, sure. But there isn't anything anywhere in any mathematics or formal constructions that you can't connect to laws of form.
Yes, but you always look for a beautiful way to do it. And you
I'm sorry, you always what?
You look for a beautiful, direct way to achieve it. And,
well, yes, of course.
when
you're satisfied with it, it will be beautiful. And when you're not satisfied with it, it will be the usual run of what one encounters.
Yeah, and you can always be inspired by contributions, even if you cannot follow them to the full generality. It is always great to. So I will definitely ask you about it.
Sure.
Before
the motivation is physical.
I think I need to. I think I'll end the recording, unless. What do you think, Leon? Do you want to take it over, or I think I'm recording to my cloud, so I think I'm going to end the recording, and we'll call that officially the end. But then I'll send host powers over to Leon and or Graham, and then
yeah, that's fine. I will have to leave at 9, but I'll take over.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna end the recording. I just want to. Just for the recording, you don't all have to leave if you don't want to, but I just want to thank everyone for this amazing celebration of Spencer Brown. I think we did get to honor him in many important ways, and so just thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.